It's funny, just a comment I wanted to make. I had the opportunity yesterday to speak at a high school class on leadership. So first of all, you know intensity when you're speaking to a class full of grade 12 students. They are not afraid to ask questions along the way. But the fun part actually about it was that the themes and things that they were asking about were actually quite consistent with a lot of the conversations which have happened here so far. The difference that I would say is, one, they didn't know the terminology, of course. So when no one said transformational leadership, but there was a lot of conversations about how do you manage change? You know, how do you, what do you do at work? Like what goes on? And there really, if I kind of look at a lot of the presentations that went on today, so for example, the great presentation talking about personality differences and how they fit into roles there, they're asking about things like that in their own special 16-year-old ways. So that was a great, it was just a great thing to be part of then. So today I want to talk a little bit about mobility and the enterprise and some of the things that we've seen happening over the past really kind of 12 years happening there, and kind of what are some of the things that we see kind of coming up in the future then as well. To Michelle's point, I'm sure people might have heard about us. We've been in the news a little bit recently then. RIM's been going through a bit of a transformational change on its own then as well too, which is exciting and exhilarating to be part of. Stories about our death are a little bit premature, I would say then as well. These numbers are actually a little bit out of date. We just announced yesterday that we're over 80 million subscribers, so we continue to grow all around the world then, 60 million BBM users. I've been at RIM for 12 years now. When I started, how many people here ever used our early devices, the kind of called them pagers, the 850, 950? They look kind of like about this XY of a credit card. Yeah, there's a few people in the room, people that work at RIM at the back excluded. It's wild watching the changes which have happened in mobility over those past 12 years. At the time, I went to a conference in 2001 and meeting a few people there, they said, where do you work? I said, I work for Research in Motion, and I got the blank stare. And I said, we make BlackBerry. And then like the eyes lit up at that point. It's like, oh, that's who you are. And then now I would say there's a lot more understanding of us around the world in terms of who we are, what we do, and really what this segment around mobility really is. As I said, mobility has changed tremendously over those past 12 years, and if you kind of ignore some of the things on this graph here, what I think is really interesting is to look at how mobility has moved from being a neat, cool trinket to an essential part of how an enterprise or a government gets its job done every way. And what's fascinating is if you look in '99, when BlackBerry came out, the innovation was email to your hip. So I can get access to my email wherever I am, and I can respond. Email basically became instant messaging back before there was really instant messaging. And that was a huge change for how people interacted with their email and their contacts and all those types of things. What we've seen enterprises, for example, then, is they start to internalize what those things mean is changing how they actually do business. So, for example, we have a customer I know in the US. They kind of is almost a bit of a skunkworks project. They created a mobile loan approval application. This was intended to go out to people working actually in branch offices. And what it did was basically speed up the time that it took to approve someone's loan. Neat idea, relatively simple in terms of the processes, in terms of the types of the application itself. This very, very, very quickly became a $250 million a year business for them. That's wild. So one, for example, this is mobility creating something great for the organization. The really crazy part about it, and this is what I think a lot of people have touched on in the talks today, is you create a $250 million business. That's great. You get toasts for that whole quarter. The next quarter is, how are you going to grow that by 10%? Make that better. What was this wild, exciting new thing that you created then suddenly becomes a normal part of your day-to-day operations that you need to institutionalize, that you need to continue to refine, need to make better and better and better. I'm the security guy. So my background is cryptography, so I'm a math nerd. I apologize if I go down that road anywhere along the way then. Security comes into this a little bit, and we'll come to that in a moment here to kind of look at that then. But this is something that we've seen happen all across the board. This isn't specific to BlackBerry, is a change of mobility again. infiltrating business processes and in some ways driving them entirely, so that processes that used to be done at a desktop now are being done if someone's in the field. It could be done, well, even someone's walking around a conference like today, for example. Now, part of what's been most fascinating over the last 4 or 5 years has been some very big changes which have happened within the technology around mobility and how people interact with it. I spent a lot of time working with government customers around the world. If you told me 5 years ago that the conversation I'd be having with a large government, and one of the largest governments around the world, was how they want to leverage cloud computing to store all of their email off-premise, maybe by a third-party host, which may or may not be within the geographical confines of the country, I would call you crazy. But these are the types of conversations which are going on now. Things like cloud computing then are very much a reality in a lot of cases then. Often driven by cost is a good example, but also driven by the concept of many screens, where now I want to access my information not just at my computer, but also on my smartphone, on my tablet, on whatever terminal I have access to then. Ironically, if you squint, it looks a lot like going back to mainframe days where you have terminals which are giving you time-sharing access into a system. The second one is this trend around consumerization. Similarly, if you went back 5 years ago and you said, my users in my organization are going to come to me and they're going to tell me what desktop computers they want to use, and more specifically, bring their desktop computers from home into the office and use them, I would again similarly call you crazy. But BYOD, and the bring your own device trend, is a reality, much more so in North America than in Europe. We see it not happening nearly as much in Europe as it is here in North America, but it is definitely happening and growing in other places. There's a couple of reasons why that seems to be going on. As a user, they look at their smartphone and they say, there's so much power and I use it all of my life, then, well, I want to use it at work as well. And you, Mr. and Mrs. IT, thou shalt make that happen then. Sometimes that's coming from the executive branch, or sometimes that's just coming from the groundswell of, say, a younger workforce that's demanding that, and in some ways using that as a hiring decision on their side, whether they want to join an organization. From a company's perspective, BYOD is sometimes pitched as being cheaper. Now, the reason they say cheaper is because they don't have the capital outlay. So it's CapEx cheaper. I'm not buying hardware to give to users. I might have OpEx in the sense of I'm paying for fees for someone once a month, or I'm covering off the IT support costs around that then. But the pitch is that it's cheaper. I think the reality we'll see is that it's not actually cheaper, but it is a reality, and it is something which is going on all around the world. The power of a smartphone today is that it's very much like a desktop computer, not in the sense of what you can do, but also in the sense of the horsepower that actually is inside of these things then. So I think it's a really important trend that we need to acknowledge as being something which is out there. Now, with all of these changes, it's fun to look at how our businesses and organizations actually taking advantage of it. And the case study I wanted to focus on today is looking at policing. One, because I'm a security guy and I spend a lot of time with police forces around the world, and two, because it's fun, and three, because it's very illustrative. The pictures, if you haven't guessed, on the right-hand side are from the UK. They're going on there. Colors and hats tell a good story in that case then. I'll give you the punchline up front. Through the use of mobility, UK police forces have saved £112 million. This is a lot of very real money. What have they done? Basically, they have given officers mobile access to all of the things that they would traditionally do back at the office from their mobile device. Specifically in the UK, for example, 1 in 7 police officers carry a BlackBerry. This is intense then, because then the organizations have seen what they can do to leverage it. Actually, it's kind of neat. I've seen, I think it's South Wales Police Force, they have their TAC vests that they wear, and they actually, there's a special kind of universal clip which is used for different things, and they actually have one for a holster, not for a gun, but for a BlackBerry, which is pretty neat to see then. But what they use their BlackBerries for, they use their smartphones for a lot of different things. So one is database lookups, fairly obvious. Maybe that's the point of a mobile device, is to access information which is stored back in your enterprise. They use them for evidence gathering. Smartphones have cameras. Smartphones also have things like GPS on them. And from an evidentiary point of view, now you can tag geographical coordinates to a picture you're taking, and then you can upload that into your systems. What a powerful and fast way to do it. Rather than an officer having to go back, check out the special fancy camera from the office and go out and take pictures, and then, especially if evidence that degrades over time, they can be on the job and do it faster. Third one is shift briefings. If I'm an officer and I'm kind of handed off from whoever's in the field, I'm going out next, I want to know what went on. I can get my briefing notes on my mobile device in front of me then as well. And covert policing. If you think about a police officer who is not in uniform, so who's in some type of covert operation, and if they pull out a big tetraphone and call back into the dispatcher and say, that license plate up there, and read a license plate, is there an outstanding warrant out for the person who's driving that? They kind of defeated the purpose of covert at that point then. But if an officer pulls out a smartphone, they just look like everyone else out there, because smartphones are ubiquitous within a lot of areas. They pull out their smartphone, they can covertly interact, say, with the database system, do an evidentiary, or do a database lookup. They can look at pictures, outstanding warrants, those types of things. And actually, we've seen in different parts of the UK, arrest rates go up because of the use of mobility. The other side effect of all of this here as well is that we see that police forces are either spending between 8 and 25% more time in the field as well too. And community policing is a huge part of the success of police forces around the world then. And the use of mobility is very much transforming the way that organizations, the way that police forces then can interact with the citizenship, because they can do the best part of their job, which is be in the field. And that's what mobility allows them to do. Another one here, this is from a Canadian perspective, something that the Chatham-Kent Police Force in southwestern Ontario has done a lot of work in driving, and that is looking at, can you use tablets as a mobile data terminal replacement? So first of all, what's a mobile data terminal? That's the computer that sits in a car, in a police car. What do they use them for? Going back in systems, access to surveillance videos, turning the cool lights on and the siren and all those types of fun things as well. These are freakishly expensive. They're also big. Now, I believe it was mid-2001 when the last Crown Victoria was manufactured. Crown Victoria's had lots of space inside. The car which is pictured there is, I think, a Charger. The other ones like the Interceptor as well too. They're much more compact inside. There's not as much room for an officer and all of their gear, and also to have a bulky computer inside there as well. So the use of a tablet, it's actually a fifth of the cost. When you look at budgets and the budget situations you have with police forces in Canada, as a good example, is wherever you can save money, it's great. The other benefit of this is that they're highly portable as well too. You can put them into the docking situation, which you can kind of see pictured there as well, interact with the systems, and then take it with you as well too, especially for, say, taking witness reports and those types of things as well too. This is something which is, again, a huge change for how policing works in organizations. And that's I think in many ways, kind of the definition of a transformational change there as well. Now, is all of this, kind of sunshine and puppies and Tim Hortons Boston cream donuts? Well, no, obviously, and I wouldn't be the security guy if I didn't kind of point this out as well. Users love the freedom of bringing whatever device they want into an organization. That is the epitome of fun. Is that the epitome of having a strong audit position for your organization? Short answer is probably not. Gartner did a survey about 1.5 years ago, excuse me, to look at basically saying, yeah, with consumerization, do you think you're going to pass a security audit? People basically said no, they didn't feel that. Sometimes there's a concern around security because it's the boogeyman in the room, and much like insurance, I don't think I need to worry about security until something bad happens. The reality is that bad things do happen, and it is cost quite a bit. How many people in the room here would be shocked if I told you that the most common security issue around mobile devices is loss? People lose devices all of the time. I have a very good example of this from my own time. I was at a conference in Orlando. Part of the fun event for the conference was they'd rented part of Universal Studios. And so part of that, alcohol, roller coasters, what can go wrong? I go onto the roller coaster, and somewhere between one of the ups and downs, my BlackBerry decides to release itself from my body and travel off into the nether regions of Disneyland. So I get off of the roller coaster, and like a good mobile phone user, I immediately want to go grab my smartphone and to check what's been going on in the last 45 seconds, and it's not there. Well, what do I do? This is a common situation. You see like 15, 25% of smartphones are lost or stolen each year. I had this happen to me. Luckily, I had a number of coworkers around. I could grab one of their BlackBerries. I could email our IT department. I could say my BlackBerry just exited the premises. They could send a mobile wipe command to it. They could actually check to make sure that the command was executed so they know that all of the corporate data was lost. And they could call Rogers in that case, because I'm a Rogers subscriber, disable my SIM card. Problem solved. Another coworker had an extra device because we're RIM employees, so we like trinkets. They gave me my device. I had an extra SIM card with me, popped it in, typed in an enterprise password, activated my device, and Bob's your uncle, I had access to my information again. Now, from RIM's point of view, what did they lose? They lost the hardware for the device, which apparently survived the fall off of the roller coaster because the command was executed on it then and things didn't pop out of it when it hit the ground. But they didn't lose any data. Data's expensive. The stat, which is from here, this is from sometime last year, it was about $258 a record. This is kind of an amortized thing. These are hard. Honestly, these are hard to put actual numbers onto them then. But it is a real issue then as well too, and we have to make sure that these are approached then. Because the fun part is mobility can absolutely transform how any enterprise, how any government goes about their day. If you Minister Clement had a good example talking about the move from paper to e-records, e-documents. They're great. You don't have to carry this big heavy briefcase around, which is notoriously easy to lose as well too, ignoring all the dead trees associated with it as well. E-documents are great. They're updatable, they're searchable, they're portable, all these great things, but wow, I think they might be worth more than $258 a page if one of those was lost then. So security needs to be a fundamental part of however that is enabled then. So what do we see about the future then as well? Obviously, we see transformation continuing at a rapid pace. We think this is a huge part of what has made mobility successful over the past kind of 12, 15 years. And this is completely part of how we very much view computing going over the next 15 years as well too, is embracing mobility even more, no matter what type of screen you're interacting with information. Though there's often an emphasis that get hung up on the device. Much like the book about a different thing, is it's not just about the device. It's about the whole picture then as well. And that story that I talked about me losing my device on a roller coaster, the device was key, because if the device wasn't able to, say, execute the wipe command, then it doesn't matter whatever type of enterprise system you have in place, your data's hosed at that point then as well. So you need the enterprise system for managing all of this. If you look at that example, that the Chatham-Kent Police Service example, it wasn't just sticking a playbook in a squad car and you going from there. It was very much about third-party applications written to specifically actuate the siren and light system within the police cruiser. It was a hardware vendor to build the case for it to actually lock into the car and get power and all those good things. It was the back-end management system to manage access to information to that device then. And also, and this is one of the things that doesn't get mentioned all the time, is it's the support side of it as well too. An enterprise who is relying on mobility as being a mission-critical part of what they do, by definition, can't afford downtime. They need support. They need that strong support relationship with a vendor, in that case then, to provide that support to let them continue to offer that mission-critical system there. And of course, being the crypto nerd, you need security as part of all this then. Sometimes security is the boogeyman. I think very much security is much like brakes. Why do cars have brakes? Because it lets them go faster. If you didn't have brakes on a car, you could basically go as fast as you were able to dive out of the car when you got up to a bend, and you weren't able to slow down in order to navigate the bend appropriately then. When a car has brakes, you can go faster in a straightaway and slow down in a curve. Much like that, security And any system is an enabler. It allows you to do more with the system then. And this is very much true with mobility as well too, where security is that enabler to allow you to access police databases. It allows you to do fingerprint lookups through a vendor. It allows you to capture evidence in a way that meets legal tests. These are all huge parts of this as well. So the main takeaways I want to leave everyone with here is, as I said, mobility will continue to transform the enterprise, transform government. I think we're still in early days in all of this here. Excited to see how all this transforms over the next while. But it's not just about the device, it's the whole picture. You have all the different pieces that you need to consider in it as well. Beyond the device, it's the management, it's all these other pieces as well. And put one BlackBerry plug in here. If you want to learn more about where our heads are at and where kind of we're going, we'll have an event going on October 15th. Yvonne and Michelle, who've been spending time in our booth there, happy to talk to you about it and get you an invite to that as well too, if you want to speak with either of them to have details there. But that's the main thing that I wanted to leave with everyone today. So I think I got a couple minutes. Tried to stay as close to schedule as possible then. Happy to take some questions if anyone has. Yeah, very good question. I'm not sure if the camera picked up all of that, but basically the question was talking about how do you kind of balance the tangible, meaning the device, and the ephemeral, meaning the data which is on it there, and kind of what are RIM's views on that. So one thing, the emphasis has always been for mobility is I'm accessing some type of back-end service, wherever it might be. In the beginning, when it was just email, it was air quotes just about how do I provide security back into my Exchange server or things like that. The fascinating thing now with things like consumerization, for example, is there's this big push for users to say, well, I want to have my life and my work life coexist on a device then. And so the tangible is the compelling, wonderful device experience for the user. But the ephemeral piece there is how do I manage that separation of data underneath the covers, still provide that great experience on top. Yeah, let's be frank, everyone, like work-life balance is a bit of a kind of a crock. You have a life, and you do work at different times during the day. I have two kids. They're 2 and 4 years old. They kind of have a lot going on with them there, and they're only 2 and 4 years old. And so I need to manage my life and my work all together then so that I can kind of fit all the different pieces together. So, being able to manage personal and work, I think, is being one of the really big next areas that you'll see happening in mobility is there's a lot of, for me, a lot of very fun security parts under the covers of that. Thank you. I was also going to say, I'll be hanging out as well too afterwards, so happy to chat with anyone along the way then. Okay, thank you.